Hey, good morning. This is Coffee with Grant. I'm Grant. This is Ruby Dog. Say hello. What you got, itches? There you go. Yeah. Good morning. Oh, every once in a while, my faith in humanity gets a little too high, and I dive into the comment section to look at the worst comments on local news stories on Facebook and Reddit and those places. And what I've noticed is there's a lot of bots in there, and bots are trying to get your attention. They are trying to generate a response from you. They want you to engage, and the easiest way to do that is not with informed debate or, having good information. It is outrage. It is what I'm going to call casual cruelty. But in trying to figure out which accounts are bots and which accounts are people, you inevitably run into a person. And I am always mystified by how somebody could get to there, because it's always somebody who's older. When you follow this thing through, it's always somebody who's either late Gen X or boomer in age, and they have decided that if they see somebody that they don't like online, if they see any sort of thing they disagree with, somebody suffering, it is they are compelled for some reason to hop onto their phone, to go online, and to say that they endorse whatever suffering is happening. And I'm trying to figure that out, because it was making, I think it's enough to cause one to disengage. And in many ways, I think that's the end goal, is to have reasonable people who want everybody to get along to be fed up. And to be honest, I'm one of the few people in my circle who still have a Facebook account active, and I was going through the motions yesterday to see if to finally erase my account and remove all of my Facebook information from the internet. And I mean, I've had a Facebook account since 2006, like 20 years. That makes me feel old. Like, and not to wax nostalgic on what Facebook used to be, but back in the day, this is be my old man rant. Back in the day, Facebook was just your friends, and you needed a .edu email to even get aboard, and someone had to invite you, so you knew you was a real human. And that's basically it. Yeah, it's those initial things that Facebook started with, in that you had to have a email address from a college, which was always ended in .edu. You had to be invited, so somebody else, one of your peers, had to have an invite from Facebook, and they could invite you and go in, and it was only those people. And that started the platform in such an interesting, like a leg up, basically. And then, of course, they opened it up to everybody. And then they open it up to everybody, and they're like, wait a second, we're not making any money. We could be ads everywhere. And as soon as we went to an ad-based model for social media, then it becomes about clicks and likes and less about content. It becomes less about the end user experience and more about how much can we sell advertising to. So, like, one of the big problems we have in social discourse right now is that people will there is no incentive for tech companies to self-regulate and get rid of bots, because bots are making them money. Because if I am I'm the advertiser, and I'm coming to Facebook and I say, hey, I want to really make sure that I'm paying you $20 million, and I want a big bang for my buck. I want a lot of people to see my ad and click on it and interact with it, and I want to see some results. And if Facebook has, I don't know, 20, 30 million bot accounts, and they purposefully either seek out ads or scroll past them and view them in as part of this. They go in and they like your ad, like you see like an ad and it's got like 20,000 likes on it. You see that none of those are real humans. No one is going in and be like, oh man, this seems like a solid ad for dog food dispensers or whatever. And the advertiser gets to feel good because they're like, oh my, I reached so many people, and all of it's fake. And in the meantime, what we're seeing is that what social media could be as a platform for communication has completely eroded. Like, it doesn't do what it says it should or could do anymore. There isn't a positive when it comes to political discourse, when it comes to local discussion. Things have to be heavily, heavily moderated, is what we've learned. And I think that's true of any human society. You cannot have a human society which is just a free-for-all. Comes back down to my the idea that you can't run any group of more than like a homestead as a libertarians. And even so, right? Like, that would be kind of a fun comedy sketch to do, where it's like, it's like a 90s sitcom, but the whole household is libertarians, and therefore they don't believe in each other's authority and don't want to help each other, and it's every man for himself, even at the household level. It's not even like we're going to band together in this house and we're going to share labor and resources. It's like, no, I'm going to have my own kitchen that I have in my room, and you guys can cook food in your kitchen. And like, I've said this multiple times, but libertarianism is a philosophy that you can have in your shack in the woods, but you cannot run a community on it. It just physically doesn't work. And similarly, social media has to have guidelines. The more people you have and the more agency those people have to take actions within a group, you have to have a set of etiquette for how to behave. You have to have a set of standards, which people have all agreed that those we are all agreeing that to be in this venue, to be in this forum and participate in this forum, we agree to these rules. If you can't agree to these rules, then you don't get to participate. That seems pretty straightforward. And right now, social media is the Wild West. There are no rules, as far as I can tell, for participation. And I mean, even so, it's like maybe those rules are so lax and so far to the end where it's like, oh, it's okay to have that casual cruelty. It's okay to celebrate death and destruction of your enemies. It's okay to be callous. But the line, I guess, is you can't upload a beheading video. It's like anything shy of literal beheading, that's fine. But as far as day-to-day etiquette and things, trying to rile people up for likes and clicks or outrage, or just, there's always been trolls on the internet. I don't understand how. I think that's the problem, is that millennials were raised on the internet, and we knew that trolls existed, and we knew that this is a subset of humanity that psychologically wants to outrage people, wants to get your goat, so to speak, to use an old idiom. And you don't feed the trolls. That was the whole thing, and it's something you learned. There's going to be people who are trying to outrage you, and you just had to walk away. You had to not engage. And then suddenly there was this huge influx of boomers into Facebook. Arguably, baby boomers, at least in the U.S. I mean, Facebook has billions of users, but in the U.S. at least, it's mostly older people who have clung to Facebook, and they never got that initial internet safety bringing up, whether it is vetting information that you're seeing as potentially fake or fraudulent, and that just happens when people would share like old news stories, and you'd be like, oh my god, that's so bad, and like, ha, I got you, that's fake. You learn inherently to things can be deceptive, and I don't think we're seeing that. Media literacy has gone way down, And it's oh, okay, I'm going to sign into Facebook. I'm going to scroll. I'm going to find an article that jives with my worldview because my media bubble is so curated that I only want to see things that jive with my worldview. I'm going to look at a headline, not even click through the article or read it. And many times, if you click through the article, there's either a paywall or it is so poorly written by AI that you can barely read it anyway. And then I'm going to make a casual, cruel statement to back up whatever my bias is in the comments of this thing. And I think this begs the question of neuroplasticity at this point, which is if you are someone who goes onto the internet and you have trained your brain to find the cruel thing to say, and you go out of your way to say it, then you are going to, that's what you are training your to do. You are the person who now does the cruel thing online. You are the person who is unable to show empathy, is unable to show compassion. You are leveling up. You are reinforcing that behavior every single time that happens. And neuroplasticity can happen with good behaviors as well. If you train yourself to find the good in people, if you train yourself to think about other people's needs or considerations, then you can absolutely train your brain to be kind. But I think what we've seen over the last 10 years, and I'd be very interested to see how long it takes to redo that. I would imagine that it's fairly easy and quick to change your neural pathways in that way. Like, I'm thinking, like, if you did this every day for a month and a half, if you went on every day and all you did was scroll through local news articles, and then you're like, I'm going to weigh in, good thing that they died, I wish ICE had taken that, like all that stuff. If you did that every single day with all the stuff you did for, I think, probably 3 weeks, you'd probably that would be what you do. And then you do that same thing for 10 years, from 2016 to 2026, and all of a sudden you're just this bitter, awful person. And that's what we see. The people on the outside who are just like, oh, well, we're not engaging with you. We just see this awful stuff. And some people still do. And some people are like, oh, I feel compelled. That's what I'm going to do is I'm going to give that person a response. I'm going to say, hey, you aren't behaving correctly. And then they will pull out another casually cruel thing and keep going. And it's not worth your time as a reasonable person. And what that means is that all the discourse online is miserable people and bots just being shitty to each other. There's no upside. There needs to be a level of understood etiquette. And I think what we see too is that we see these people who are casually cruel online, and they spend, let's say, 60 to 80% of their I'm going to use the word social here, but you know what I mean, their social interaction online. They're using their brain to come up with responses to things. If they spend that much time online, and then inevitably they go to real life and they try to behave that same way, and people lose their shit. Like, these are the same people who scream at people on the streets, who have complete meltdowns at customer service representatives. Those are the people who they're very I'm the main character energy, and who will fight with flight attendants on planes and think that because at some point being an internet troll means that you also aren't wrong. In your head, you aren't wrong, because being wrong, the ability to admit fault and the ability to be just a little teeny bit self-aware is antithetical to trolling people for responses and cruelty on the internet. Because if they were capable of that, then you would go on and you would say, they would go, I'll give you an example. I was just on a news article that was covering how ICE was still ramping up arrests and had assaulted a pregnant lady without cause or warrant or anything, for just existing on the street in the wake of the shooting that had just happened, and that there were tensions rising on in the city itself, and this was going on. And many of the comments, one in particular, was this lady who goes, "Oh, I should have shot her too." And you're like, interesting. Like, that's your knee-jerk reaction. Like, what's your goal here? You saw a thing about how apparently you're so for police brutality and fascism that you saw a news article about how they had wrong, and they read the article. It was about how they had ultimately let this lady go because she'd done nothing wrong. So the argument is, this is a lady who is pregnant, who happens to be brown, and ICE decided that they were going to just harass her, throw her onto the ground, handcuff her, and drag her through the snow. And your response was, no, they didn't do enough harm to that lady. And I don't get how you can go through that and still like enjoy have a decent life. Like, at that point, is your brain so melted that you don't understand empathy to your fellow man? You've completely dehumanized the things. Because if you had the ability to change in that moment, the next comment was like, this is evil. Like, why are you wishing harm on other people? You should be a better person. And if you had the ability to look at yourself and change, you go, oh shit, am I being a horrible person? I should look at that. Maybe I need to change my behavior. And that would mean admitting that they were wrong. And these people can't admit that they're wrong. They're too far down the rabbit hole to admit that they're wrong. They are, at every turn, at every opportunity, to find something to improve about themselves, they have been given validation that they don't need to. That instead of saying, oh, I need to think with consideration and nuance about this problem, which is immigration, you can instead go, nope, we can paint with a broad brush, and ICE is going to, anybody ICE targets deserves whatever they get. Or anything that the police do is justified. I see that a lot. I don't get this argument of going, oh, because they're a law enforcement officer, regardless of their training, their behavior, or their conduct, they have to be obeyed. And if you didn't obey, they get to kill you. That's not how any of that works. That isn't how any of that works. There's a reason why we have training for law enforcement officers. There's actually a reason why police departments in some of the cities in our country who have the worst reputation for police brutality are coming out and saying, yeah, these are a bunch of clowns. And you're like, really? Really, Philadelphia? Really, Philadelphia Police Department? Those are a bunch of clowns. You're like, okay, so we've hit a new low when it comes to that. But at the same time, you do get an appreciation for how tense social interactions have been handled thus far when you see this example of how they are being handled so poorly now. You're like, oh, I didn't realize it could be that bad. There is a tactical, as in tactical, not as in like Gravy Seal, but tactical as in like a preparedness that is required to go into situations like that to mitigate risk and de-escalate. And what we're seeing right now is this willful wanting for, it's like this lust for more violence and schadenfreude against your perceived enemies. And it's also a muddying of the waters when it comes to identifying a problem. We cannot solve any problem as a society if we can't agree there is a problem in the first place. And so when we have things like, oh, we can't even agree that that was murder, like that it even has to go to trial, that and there was any wrongdoing, when clearly we all have the video evidence from 17 different angles and the officer's own body cam of this shooting, and it's pretty clear how that interaction went down, and yet the gaslighting is still there, and there is still people who aren't part of the government who are willing to toe the line so completely that they're willing to distrust their own eyes because they're afraid of being wrong. Yeah. And the thing is, I tend to think in terms of solving problems, right? It is very, very easy, and I think we've gotten very, very good at identifying problems. We Anybody and everybody can go and like, this is a big problem, this is a problem. We all agree that this, it's because it's part and parcel with complaining. Like, you've had an experience, you outline the experience you don't like, this sucks. I mean, people will constantly complain about traffic and go, oh, you guys are the worst drivers, I had this awful experience, etc. and so forth. Yeah, we've become hyper fixated on identifying the symptoms of the problem, and we are absolutely garbage at solving the root causes of problems, of even coming up with solutions for these. So, how do you solve casual cruelty in social media and in real life? How do you steer that ship backwards and go back to that? And I think the answer is, partially it is more in-person social interaction. Part of it is incentives to collaborate, in that things like, oh, waiting in line, waiting your turn, having a sense of social fairness, sharing resources in some way, like being considerate of other people, etc. And the problem is, we've set up so much barrier aggression as a society, especially here. I'm in Omaha, and Omaha is unfortunately a driving city. It was part of the cadre of Midwest cities that had their streetcars purchased by car companies and then shuttered in the late 40s, early 50s, because General Motors and the like were afraid that if people were riding the streetcars and they'd grown up riding the streetcar or the light rail system, that they wouldn't need to buy a car, and this would ultimately hurt car sales in the US. So they got together, formed a shadow company, bought all of the streetcar companies in like Kansas City, in Omaha, in Des Moines, uh, in several other, in Lincoln, several other places here in the Midwest, and then they just went, oh, nope, sorry, it's too expensive to run them, and put them out of business. And then overnight, there were no streetcars. And Omaha has developed since then as a driving city. You can't get around without a car. It would be very difficult. Unlike like Chicago or New York, where you can live in your apartment, walk 2 blocks to the train station, take the train to wherever you need to get to. It's another couple of blocks on the other end, etc. We really have no functional, comprehensive public transport system like that. The buses kind of count, but the buses aren't as reliable, and you have to drive a car to get around. And cars are huge instigators of barrier aggression, which is what road rage comes from. So it is possible for you to be in your isolated little social media bubble, in your suburban home out west, get into your car, drive, even go get food through the drive-through, barely interact with a human, go do things that you needed to go to work, only interact with your work people, get in your car, drive back, and never have to interact with your fellow citizens. And that lack of interaction has caused a lack of empathy. And these same people who complain about ICE not being cruel enough, the same people are the people who tell me that my park downtown is too dangerous to go visit. And they don't want to go downtown because it's dirty and because it's dangerous. And so it's just racist is what it is, because, our park downtown is wonderful. On any given night, you'll go down and there is a hugely diverse group of people and families and little kids, just enjoying a public space together. I go down to the park when I need my faith in humanity restored. I also have, yeah, but there's food truck vendors, there's people getting ice cream, like it's hard to make that argument when you see it with your own eyes. And I would love to be like, hey, yeah, you guys want to come down and meet at the park? And they'll be like, no, I don't want to get stabbed, thank you. And it's like, well, that is casual. That's casual racism, and it's cruel. And the answer would be like, oh, if you actually came down to the park, had ice cream, sat in a big hammock next to a fire pit, and you're like, oh wait, is this threatening? There's a guy with a ukulele on the corner. Oh no. But you would have to admit that you're wrong. Oh, just a little to be like, oh, I was wrong. This is pretty cool. But there's something about developing this bias and then being like, nope, I've made up my mind on this thing and I'm going to stick to it forever. And that's not what humans do, and that's not what healthy people should do. And I don't know if there's like a deprogramming thing to do that, but I think part of the answer would be like they would get their asses kicked pretty darn quick. Their behavior would be corrected if like the internet suddenly broke. If suddenly everybody was forced to interact in person, if the only way that you could sell your thing is to go to the like literal message board and post a flyer up to say, I have this old couch and I need to sell it, and you'd stand outside there and try to interact with people. Being casually cruel and being super shitty is going to get shut down very quickly. There's a reason why communities that meet in person often normally don't have people like that. And so because the internet has this barrier aggression, because you don't see your reaction, because there isn't a threat of physicality, because in person there's always that threat of physicality. There's always this implication that you're like, if you step out of line, someone might take it upon themselves to put you back in line. We've gone down this odd road, and I don't know if the answer is to abandon social media completely so that it becomes this awful echo chamber where eventually it's just bots and people with no empathy. Or is it to attempt to build a code of conduct that people can buy into? Or is there need to be a grassroots movement to have social media people enforce the code of conduct? But Facebook has basically said, they're like, yeah, we've got too many people, and there's so many conversations happening every single second that true moderation of those is basically impossible. So you're on your own. Like we're making money, we don't care. And I could see that as being, I think the answer is just leave. But then what happens is that reasonable people no longer have a say. They no longer have what little voice they had originally. And then whatever's left is just going to be engulfed in this. It's going to be even worse than it is now. And leaving in some ways amplifies the problem. But this is the paradox. It's hard to justify. I wouldn't advise anyone to stay on Facebook for that. Be like, well, we need your voice here because you're a good person. It's like, no, take care of your own mental health and run. Like, I think that's the answer, is like if there was a forum, it's almost like we need to start Facebook over again. Somebody else needs to start a social media platform that is, hey, you have to be a human first. If you're a human, by using this platform, you agree that your conduct will be this. And if you don't do that, you get one warning and then you're banned forever. Like, you don't get to come back in. You are an adult and you should be able to control and mitigate your own behavior, etc. and so forth. And then you'd have to build that from the ground up. And right now, the tech giants have such a huge share of this that you won't get any traction with something like that. Or you'd go bankrupt trying to fund the hosting costs for it. So, yeah, I don't know. I've been trying to keep these in under half an hour. This seems like we rambled for a bit. If you appreciate this sort of ramble and would like to hear more, that's Coffee with Grant. It's where I get caffeinated and just ramble into a camera for a little bit, and you get to see my dog. Hey, dog, you got anything to add? No? All right. Have a good day. Till tomorrow.